Good evening. Call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Inform the public we're being recorded live by Raycam. Ms. Riley, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The minutes, please.
Yes, I'd make a motion to accept the minutes as printed of the September 9th meeting, the September 10th meeting, and the September 11th meeting.
So second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Those are approved. We have a packed agenda this evening, and unless the board objects, after we do department heads, I'm going to skip a few sections and bring on the Public Safety Building Committee so we can let them get on with their evening without objection. Seeing none. Okay, first department head, our Fire Chief, Brian Lasivita. And Chief, I think this is your first official report. Congratulations.
Thank you.
No new gray hair.
Thank you, Chief.
So the activity report for August of 2019, we responded to 77 fire incidents, 181 ambulance calls, and our fire prevention division did 127 calls. So 385 calls for the month. We did respond mutual aid 2 times. We received 1 mutual aid ambulance once, and we went to the city of Taunton for a structure fire, fairly large house there on Harrison Ave or Street or whatever that may be. We did have 1 firefighter out in the month of August, from August 13th to September 12th. So we had some unforeseen sick time coverage due to an off-duty injury. And we were awarded a CERT grant for $2,500, and Kevin Marrera kind of handled the equipment that he wanted to buy through that. And we were also awarded our Student Awareness and Fire Education grant for a total of $3,754. And then we also received $2,400 to educate our seniors as well as the children in the schools. And I have just 2 things. A note of thanks to Marcus Baptiste. He allowed us to train in some of his. He's building a subdivision down on the Locust Street, Forest Street area. He had some vacant buildings that he allowed us to train in the month of July. It was very helpful. All the groups got to go through that and do some real fire training. And a congratulations to one of our newer firefighters, Cody Medeiros. He just passed his paramedic a couple weeks ago.
Perfect.
So he's on
Thanks,
board
Chief.
and ready to go.
Any questions for the chief?
No, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for all your efforts and your department's efforts.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Jim.
Matt?
Yeah, it's like the first day of the Congress. Right? You passed,
First one down, right?
Yeah, okay.
No, it wasn't on the agenda, but late yesterday, the state, the Mass Department of Public Health and Mass Department of Agriculture held a conference call. They have decided to do a 3rd aerial spraying for mosquitoes in Bristol, parts of Bristol and Plymouth counties, and that is going to begin tonight, actually, as we speak. Of course, it's weather dependent. It's going to be very similar to the previous 2 times. Same aircraft, same pest insecticides. They're concentrating on the critical risk and the high risk communities only. So the actual zone area is a little bit smaller, but since Raynham is critical, we are completely within the spray zone. Although it is getting colder at night, they're gonna, the pilots will be evaluating the temperatures as they're flying and make adjustments as necessary. So it will take several nights to complete, depending on the weather. Like the second round, they're not going, because of the temperature differences, they're not going to say where they're going to be spraying that night. Instead, the following day, on the Department of Agriculture's mapping system, they will show what was sprayed that previous night. So once you've been sprayed, that'll be it. So until you've been sprayed, just consider the fact that you may be sprayed that night. Due to the colder temperatures, to try and get as much done as they can, the pilots will be looking for warmer areas, so there may be several spots in Raynham or other towns that may get sprayed one night, but not the whole town or whole sections. So with that in mind, we're still getting triple E positive mosquitoes. We just had one in the trap from, I believe it was the 15th. It was a bird biting species, but it was in Raynham. And West Nile is also starting to pop up a little bit more as well. We didn't have any West Nile positive samples in Raynham, but they were in Easton. So I know it's getting a little cooler at night, but just keep in mind that the threat of mosquito-borne diseases is not over until the first hard frost. It's called a killing frost, which is 4 hours continuous of 28 degrees or lower. So looking at the weather forecast, it's probably going to be quite a ways out. Also, just for your information, Borden Colony, I've been in really good contact with Bristol County Mosquito Control and the director there, Priscilla. She, again, because of the temperatures, they're having some trouble with the ground spraying, but whenever the temperature's warm enough, they are sending the trucks out. Borden Colony was sprayed Monday night, and they're going to tentatively spray it again Friday morning. So, and also, Lowe's made another donation, insect repellent. So any Raynham residents are more than welcome to come to the Board of Health office for additional insect repellent. Any questions?
Any questions for Matt?
Do you know the timing on the spraying, Matt? Is it
Yes.
still the 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. or?
Yep, I'm sorry, it's actually going to be 7 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. Try to get, now that dusk is a little earlier, they can start a little earlier and take advantage of the warmer temperature earlier on.
All right, thank
Any
you.
other questions? Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. All right, next up, on the Old Business Public Safety Building Committee, and my understanding is Mr. Luciano is going to start that conversation for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the committee met this evening after our first meeting after the presentation of last week, which explained in detail the numerous amount of work that would be required at the existing public safety building. And on the agenda this evening was to discuss where we should go from here after last week's presentation. And the committee came up with an action plan, if the board would so direct. First step is we'd like the board to ask, if you want through me, to the police chief for the police to appoint at least 3 members to the building committee from his department. Because the next step would be to explore different site options. And as part of that, we would explore whether we want to do a joint public safety building or whether we would want to do 2 separate buildings, 1 fire and 1 police. So we would need the police input for all of that. So we would like to invite members of the police department to be members of the committee and to participate in that discussion. And at that point, once we get a consensus on what type of facility or facilities we would do, that also plays into what type of site you would want, how large of a site, what location. One of the things the fire department is going to do, and maybe I'll turn it over in a second to the chief to explain some things that he's going to do in the next 2 weeks. We're going to start some data collection and different things to give us a handle on areas of location that we want to focus on sites. So with your permission, if I could go to the fire chief?
What we're going to try to do is just try to, once we figure out what their sites are, we'll try to geographically see where our calls lie and where centralized locations will be, and just to try to find the best site moving forward so we can kind of get both sides of town and make sure we're still central. And I don't know if you have any other questions as far as, I mean, we have some data that we have to look at and compile and then present a presentation here to show where most of our calls end up and where we go.
Mr. Iafredi, any thoughts?
I'm not sure what I can add more than what Brian just talked about. We're really juggling whether or not we need 1 building or 2 buildings, and we're really trying to find a spot that's kind of front and center, because you're going to spend some money on this building. We want it to be, easily accessible. The public's going to use this building just as much as the police and fire to do their permitting work. So we're going to spend the next couple of weeks, and we're going to toss around a couple of different locations, and then we'll come back to you with some recommendations. Any questions?
Other members, committee? Anybody else? We're at a full committee meeting tonight. Everybody's still in. Nobody pulled out. And I'm very encouraged by the discussion and it was a good exchange of ideas. I think the committee we're going to try and do the right thing for this town. And these are good quality recommendations and people that are going to work on this for the best interests of the town. I think I'm safe to say you're in very good hands with this group, that the recommendations that'll come out will be in the best interests of the long-term future of this town, public safety-wise.
Well, obviously, that is what we all want. Myself, just on a personal note, I would prefer them together and not separated. Location is something you're going to have to figure out where there's a piece of land available or to purchase one or the other. So that's just my stand on it. I want to see them stay together.
Ms. Riley, any
No, I
comments?
think it sounds as though that we've got a great committee and they're
Yep.
looking at options and heading in the right direction for how we can improve what we have.
Good.
I think it sounds great.
I think
you.
the only thing I'd like to see us do to close the loop a little bit, Mr. Andre last week, and I completely agreed with him, he suggested a funding level for October to get to, and that would be about 1.3 million, and I'd like to get a consensus from the board tonight to allocate that sum to bring us up to the 2.5 million out of free cash, which would be voted on at town meeting. I'd like to get that finalized if the board's amenable to that.
And what would that be for, though?
That would be for this project. I mean, when you're talking a project of this size, there's undoubtedly going to be a debt exclusion needed, and any money
Right.
that we can put aside now is going to offset the cost of the total project that we'd have to bond out, which would therefore lower any tax burden on the residents. And I think the most fiscally sound thing to do is take the free cash we have now and spend it wisely and prudently on a project that looks like we're definitely moving forward with, as opposed to saddling the taxpayers with an additional 1.2 million in taxes.
I myself would rather wait until the Finance Committee and Capital Planning Committee have already gone through their process to see what is needed elsewhere.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd put in a placeholder with the Capital Planning Committee
Okay.
of 1.3, just for that reason, and they'll get back to the board with their recommendation. So it is under consideration, and it was submitted for consideration to both boards.
And I think that the viability of this project is going to be judged in part on how we handle the impact this is going to have on the taxpayers. And if we miss an opportunity to save them 1.2 million, I think that's going to be a failure on this board's behalf.
May I,
Ms.
Mr.
Riley?
Chairman?
Yeah.
I think that sounds prudent, but I would also like to hear just the input from the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee, but it sounds like that's the way to go.
If you've already given them the amount to hold in abeyance, so to speak, until they go through their process.
I gave them every article.
Yeah.
Every article that was
Yeah, no,
submitted
I have-
from every department, and I put that in as a placeholder for consideration. So they'll incorporate that in with all of their priorities. And if three things could happen. They could say we can't do it, we don't have enough. They could say that we can cover what we believe is sufficient dollars elsewhere for the other capital requests and still meet that goal. And there was a third option that if a couple of the articles drop off, for example, there's one question that we had to file with DOR for an opinion. If that opinion comes back that we can't do that particular article, that frees up other money.
Right.
The FinCom and the capital planning could recommend increasing that amount from 1.3. So that was the three options they told me they would put under consideration.
That's why I kind of want to wait until they get through with their process, and then, I'm not against it, I'm just saying, I want to wait until they get through. That's my opinion.
If I can go to Bob, did I handicap that correctly at the last meeting? Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Seeing none, we're going to move on. All right, appointments, we have one, Daniel McNally to the Finance Committee. What's the board's pleasure?
Move to appoint?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
That is approved. No other appointments, citizen and community input? None? No public hearings this evening. New business, it's the discussion and vote on the permanent town administrator. For those who might not have caught all three of our meetings last week, two of the meetings last Tuesday and last Wednesday were where the board interviewed the selected finalists of the advisory committee, which was Bill McKenney and Graham Waters. Mr. McKenney was interviewed Tuesday night. Mr. Waters was interviewed Wednesday night. The board made a decision Wednesday evening to put this as an agenda item this evening for discussion and potential vote on naming a permanent administrator contingent upon successful contract negotiations. So I would open it up for the board comment and potential vote. Mrs. Smith.
Okay, well, before I make any comments regarding the administrator's position, I would like to thank the selection committee because they have brought forth to us two diversified and great candidates, both of whom who were qualified for the position. I think either one of them would have fit nicely in with the town. Having said that, and after deliberating with myself, I found in my mind one candidate was just a little more impressive to me. And therefore, I would nominate and vote for Mr. Waters for the position of town administrator.
Ms. Riley.
I would echo some of the comments that Mrs. Smith made and thank our search committee for doing an excellent job. 24 candidates, and they narrowed it down to 2 excellent candidates, both extremely well qualified. And as Mrs. Smith said, I think probably either could do the job. I would also say that I was just really impressed with Mr. Waters, the scope of his education, his background experience. Almost every question that we asked him, he could draw on some experience he had either in New Carrollton, Maryland, or in Rhode Island. Cranston as town manager. Some of his ideas I thought were right spot on. I think his attitude, his enthusiasm, his excitement, the research that he did about Raynham, I think was really impressive. He actually even watched our annual town meeting, 3-hour town meeting. So that takes some commitment right there. He reached out to our former town administrator, Mr. Buckner. I understand he spoke with him for half an hour, and Mr. Buckner was also very impressed with him. I just think he really hit a home run with the interview, and I think you made a point, Mr. Chairman, too, that one thing we look for is somebody who's committed to the town, and I think he showed in his interest in Raynham and an interest in moving Raynham forward. He really would be just the right person at the right time. So I would second the nomination for Mr. Graham Waters for our town administrator.
I would, on this, agree with my 2 colleagues. I think, as the board said, 2 well-qualified candidates who I think in unique ways could do the job and would do the job well for the town of Raynham. But to me, there was that one candidate who is Mr. Waters, who I believe far and away exceeded expectations. And my litmus test is, again, as you referenced, the passion for Raynham. And I think he demonstrated that. And for somebody who was not overly familiar with Raynham coming into this process, I think he acquitted himself quite well. I think that, as the board said, the committee did a phenomenal job presenting us 2 options. I've had a few opportunities to speak with Mr. Luciano and get some inside baseball from him as well, and he, I think, without putting words into his mouth, but would feel comfortable during the transition period, handing the keys over to him and putting the town in a good place. And so I won't add much comment beyond that, other than I'm delighted this process is wrapping up and that we can move forward on a permanent basis. Though I'm sad to see you depart soon, because you've been a phenomenal asset to this board, to this town, and to me personally. And if we haven't said it enough, I know how you haven't. I appreciate you, Mr. Luciano, and your willingness to come out of retirement and pinch hit for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. So there's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that will be contingent upon negotiations.
Yes.
Is the board amenable to Mr. Luciano and I conducting the negotiations?
I'll make that motion if a motion is needed.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
I'll notify the candidates, and I'll set up a meeting
Yes.
for negotiation.
Perfect.
Contract.
All right. Any other new business, Mrs. Smith?
Nope.
Miss Riley?
No, I have none.
Any old business, Mrs. Smith?
Nope.
Miss Riley?
No, I have none.
Town Administrator's report, Mr. Luciano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fall Town Meeting will be held on Monday, October 21st at 7 p.m. at the Raynham Middle School. This meeting will be primarily focused on capital expenditures. The warrant will be on the October 1st Selectmen's meeting agenda for approval. My goal is to have the draft ready prior to that weekend for you to review before that meeting on Tuesday night. Let's see, once the warrant is approved and signed, I will forward it to the printer to prepare a draft for review. Once that step is completed, the warrant will be printed in booklet form and mailed out to each residential box holder. I am exploring with the printer for costs and an analysis is whether or not we can go one size larger as an experiment for the fall town meeting, because there's less articles, so it's a good time if we're going to experiment, to go to a 6x9 size booklet instead of the 5x8. Increase the print size to make it easier to read, and also to cut off articles when they're completed at the bottom or the middle of a page. No carryover of articles half on one page being carried over to the second page. This would be an easier process to follow along with, and I think now's a good time to do that because there's so few budgetary line items that tend to take up most of the discussion and reading in the Springtown meeting. So if we're going to see if this works, now would be the time to do it, get the input. If it doesn't, we go back to the old format in the spring. If it works, we have a new format. If the board's okay with me working on that, I'll pursue that option. All right. Selectmen's next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Tuesday, September 24th at 7 p.m. here in the Town Hall Meeting Room. The Capital Planning Committee continues the process of reviewing articles for the Fall Town Meeting tomorrow here in the Town Hall Conference Room. Wednesday, which is the 18th, at 6:30 p.m. That's it tonight.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Luciano?
No.
Okay, great, thank you. Selectmen's report, Mrs. Smith.
I really have nothing to report. I did go to the Lions Club. They had the Lions Club,
Great.
the Legion.
Oh, Legion.
Yeah, on Sunday, they had a dinner for everyone, and it was very, very good. I'm going to have to find the chef that's doing that, because I have a county meeting coming up, and I want him to do the cooking there.
Okay.
But it was very, very good. They had chowder and salad, lobster, steak, corn on the cob, and baked potatoes for $30. You cannot beat it. And it was very, very good.
Sounds good.
And when I went by Pride Day, I did not stop. It was mobbed.
Mm-hmm.
They had a great turnout. You went down, Pat.
Yes, we were there, obviously, for Rave, and
Right.
just want to thank Kevin Ellis and Shirley. I think this is their 21st year coordinating that, and that takes a huge effort. Our Raynham Police and Raynham Fire were both there, along with many community groups and businesses, and the weather was perfect. It was just another great day for Raynham.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Riley?
No.
Okay. Likewise, I was at Pride Day, great turnout, and good to see especially with the Patriots on,
Oh,
beautiful
yeah.
weather.
And that was a good game, too.
Yes, absolutely. And the only other thing I have, I should have mentioned it last week and I didn't, but just to keep the board in the loop, as you know, I'm chairman of the Bristol County Advisory Board, and the commission has reappointed me as one of 5 members on the personnel board for the county, so just keep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's, yeah.
Congratulations.
Condolences.
Yeah.
No. Congratulations. They got to make him suffer.
Yeah.
He has it too easy here.
Yeah. Correspondence. We actually do not have any this evening. I'm just going to double check, but I don't believe we have anything. What? Yeah. Okay. No members of the press are with us this evening. Any emergency business?
No.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn, and we'll be going into an executive session following with no other business thereafter.
Motion.
We'll come out,
So moved.
just the process, because we don't usually do it afterwards. We will come back out in public session just to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
I make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.